After 14 years, I learned my son wasn't mine. My wife left him for his wealthy biological father, but in court, my son exposed a startling truth about them. My wife, 33F, and I, 34M, thought we had the perfect family until I discovered the shocking truth. I met my wife when we were both in our early 20s. She was 20, vibrant and full of life, and I was 21, a hopeful young man who had just landed a decent job. From the moment we met, we connected on a deep level. Our relationship moved fast, but it felt right. We married when I was 24, and she was 23. A year later, we welcomed our son, Nathan. Nathan was the light of my life. From his first cry in the delivery room to his first steps, I was there for everything. I adored him. I was proud of how responsible my wife and I were despite being young parents. We built a comfortable life together. A modest home in a nice neighborhood, family vacations, and countless memories. We weren't rich, but we had enough, and most importantly, we had love, or so I thought. Everything felt solid for the first 14 years of our marriage. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but I believe we were happy. It wasn't until a few months ago that the foundation of my entire world began to crumble. It started with small things, text messages that she quickly hid, late nights claiming she had work emergencies, and an emotional distance I couldn't ignore. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself I was overthinking. But the doubt gnawed at me until one night it became unbearable. I decided to ask her directly. We were sitting on the couch after dinner, Nathan in his room doing homework. "Hey," I said casually, trying not to sound too accusatory, "is everything okay? You've been distant lately." She looked at me, her eyes wide for a moment before quickly averting her gaze. "What do you mean? Everything's fine." Her response was too quick, too rehearsed. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't press it that night. However, the seed of doubt was planted. A few weeks later, the first real blow hit. I found an email on our shared computer, an email she forgot to log out of. It was from a man named Gregory, someone I had never heard of. The email was brief but intimate. "I can't wait to see you again. These past few months have been incredible. I wish things were simpler." I felt my stomach drop. My hands trembled as I read the words over and over. Months? How long had this been going on? Who is Gregory? I closed the laptop, feeling sick. That night, I couldn't sleep. The woman I had spent over a decade with was keeping secrets from me. I decided to confront her again, but this time I was determined to get answers. The next evening, I waited until Nathan was asleep. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached her in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, humming softly, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind. "I found an email," I blurted out, unable to keep it in any longer. She froze, her hands still submerged in the soapy water. Slowly, she turned to face me. "What email?" "From Gregory," I said, my voice shaking. "Who is he?" Her face went pale. For a moment, she seemed at a loss for words. Then, she took a deep breath and said, "He's someone I used to know." "Used to know?" I repeated, incredulous. "That doesn't explain the email. You've been seeing him, haven't you?" There was a long, painful silence before she finally nodded. "Yes," she admitted. "I've been seeing him for the past 6 months." The air left my lungs. 6 months? I couldn't believe it. I felt betrayed, humiliated. "Why?" I demanded. "Why would you do this to us, to Nathan?" Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady, "Because Gregory is Nathan's real father." Her words hit me like a freight train. I staggered back, gripping the counter for support. "What are you talking about?" She swallowed hard, her voice trembling now. 14 years ago, before you and I got married, Gregory and I were together. It was a fling, nothing serious, or so I thought. When I found out I was pregnant, I wasn't sure who the father was, but I chose you because you were stable, loving, and I thought we could build a life together. But Gregory came back into my life recently, and he wanted to know his son. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My son, my Nathan, wasn't mine. Everything I thought I knew about my family, my life, was a lie. "You lied to me for 14 years, I whispered, my voice breaking. "You let me believe he was mine." "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I didn't know how to tell you. I never meant to hurt you." I wanted to scream, to cry, to lash out. But most of all, I wanted to protect Nathan. He was my son, no matter what biology said. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice hollow. "I'm leaving," she said quietly. "Gregory and I want to be together. He can provide a better life for Nathan." "Better life?" I spat. "Nathan doesn't care about money. He cares about his family, about stability." "I made my decision," she said, her voice cold now. "We're leaving at the end of the month." I couldn't believe it. She was willing to tear our family apart for this man. I had to fight back. "I'm not giving up on Nathan," I said firmly. "You can leave, but I'm his father in every way that counts, and I'll fight for custody." Her laugh was bitter. "You won't win. Gregory has more resources, more money. The courts will side with us." But I wasn't about to give up. The following weeks were a blur of pain, anger, and determination. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My life had been turned upside down, but one thing kept me grounded. Nathan. He was my son. Biology didn't matter. 14 years of love, memories, and sacrifices weren't erased by a DNA test. I hired a lawyer the very next day. I explained everything, my wife's affair, Gregory's sudden appearance, and their plans to take Nathan away. My lawyer, Mr. Hayes, listened intently, then leaned forward, his face serious. "This will be tough," he said. "Courts tend to favor biological parents, especially when they have more resources, but we have one advantage. You've been Nathan's legal father his entire life. We'll fight this." I nodded, clinging to his words. I had to believe I could win. Meanwhile, my wife and Gregory wasted no time. They filed for full custody, citing Gregory's biological connection and their ability to provide a better environment. Their lawyers painted me as a man who couldn't compete financially, as if money defined parenthood. The first hearing was brutal. My wife sat next to Gregory, holding his hand, while I sat alone. The judge listened as their lawyers presented their case. Gregory claimed he had only just discovered Nathan was his son and that he wanted to step up and be a father. My wife testified that she believed this was in Nathan's best interest. When it was my turn, I stood up, my hands shaking. "Your Honor, I've been Nathan's father since the day he was born. I've raised him, loved him, supported him. Biology doesn't make a father, love and commitment do." The judge listened but remained expressionless. The hearing ended without a decision, and we were told to prepare for a longer custody battle. The worst part was watching Nathan get caught in the middle. He was confused, hurt, and angry. He didn't understand why his mother was leaving or why this man he barely knew suddenly wanted to be his father. One night, Nathan came into my room, tears streaming down his face. "Dad," he whispered, "am I not your son anymore?" My heart shattered. I pulled him into my arms. "You'll always be my son," I said, choking back tears. "No matter what happens, that will never change." We sat there for hours, just holding each other. I promised him I would fight for us, that I wouldn't let him go without a battle. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of court dates, meetings with lawyers, and emotional strain. I tried to keep life as normal as possible for Nathan, but it was hard. Every time I saw my wife, I felt a mixture of anger and sadness. How could she do this to us? Then came the day of the DNA test. It was a formality, something Gregory's lawyers insisted on to solidify their case. I sat in the clinic, watching as the technician swabbed Nathan's cheek. He looked at me, his eyes filled with fear. "Will this change things?" he asked. "No," I said firmly. "You're my son. Nothing can change that." The results came a week later, confirming what I already knew. Gregory was Nathan's biological father. My lawyer handed me the envelope, his face grim. "This doesn't change our strategy," Mr. Hayes said, "but it complicates things. We need to prove that removing Nathan from your care would cause emotional harm." We gathered evidence, testimonies from teachers, neighbors, friends, everyone who knew how close Nathan and I were. They all said the same thing. Nathan needed me. The final custody hearing was scheduled for early December. As the date approached, I felt the weight of everything crashing down on me. The odds were against me, and I knew it, but I couldn't give up. The courtroom was packed. My wife and Gregory sat on one side, their lawyers polished and confident. I sat with Mr. Hayes, my heart pounding. Nathan was with a court-appointed child psychologist, someone who would later testify about his emotional well-being. The hearing began with Gregory's lawyer presenting their case. They emphasized Gregory's financial stability, his biological connection, and the promise of a better future for Nathan. It was infuriating. Then it was my turn. I stood up, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "Nathan doesn't need a better future. He needs stability. He needs love. For 14 years, I've been his father. Taking him away from the only home he's ever known would devastate him." Finally, the psychologist was called to the stand. She spoke about her sessions with Nathan, how confused and hurt he was by the sudden changes. But then she said something that made everyone in the room go silent. "Nathan disclosed something to me," she began carefully. "He said he overheard his mother and Gregory arguing. Gregory admitted he didn't really want custody. He just wanted to hurt Mr. last name." A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. My wife's face turned white, and Gregory shifted uncomfortably. The judge leaned forward, his expression sharp. "Is this true?" Gregory stammered, unable to form a coherent response. My wife tried to intervene, but the damage was done. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Gregory's refusal to answer spoke volumes, and my wife's panicked expression confirmed the worst. The judge ordered a brief recess, allowing both sides to gather themselves. I sat there, my heart pounding. Had Nathan just saved us with his revelation? When the hearing resumed, the judge's tone was noticeably stern. "This court takes allegations of using a child as a pawn very seriously. We will hear further testimony from both parents before rendering a decision." My wife was the first to speak. Her lawyer tried to regain control, but the damage was irreparable. She stood, visibly shaking, and attempted to justify her actions. I never wanted to hurt Nathan, she said, her voice cracking. I thought Gregory could provide him with more opportunities, better schools, a bigger house. I didn't realize how much damage we were causing. The judge interrupted, his voice firm. And yet you were willing to uproot his life for financial gain? Tears streamed down her face. I thought I was doing what was best. Gregory was next. His confident demeanor had crumbled. It's true, he admitted reluctantly. At first, I wanted custody because I believed it was the right thing to do. But over time, it became more about proving something. I didn't consider Nathan's feelings. His admission was the final nail in their case. My lawyers seized the opportunity to highlight my unwavering commitment to Nathan. Your Honor, my client has been Nathan's father in every meaningful way. Love, stability, and emotional well-being cannot be replaced by money or biology. Nathan belongs with the father who has raised him, not with someone driven by ego. The judge nodded, then addressed the courtroom. This is one of the most emotionally charged cases I've presided over. At the heart of this matter is a young boy whose life is being pulled in two directions. It's clear to me that stability and love are what Nathan needs most. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. After careful consideration, this court awards full custody to Mr. Last name Gregory's visitation rights will be discussed in a separate hearing. Relief washed over me as I absorbed the words. I had won. Nathan was staying with me. I looked over at him, sitting in the back of the courtroom with the psychologist, and saw the weight lift from his small shoulders. My wife sobbed quietly beside Gregory, who remained silent. I didn't feel triumphant, just exhausted, but more than anything, I felt grateful. After the hearing, Nathan ran into my arms, clinging to me tightly. We're staying together, right, Dad? Always, I whispered, holding him close. No one's ever going to take you away from me. Update. 2 months later, life has been different, but it's starting to feel normal again. Nathan and I are healing. He's seen a counselor to process everything, and I've started attending a support group for single fathers. My wife reached out, asking for forgiveness. She's living with Gregory but claims to regret how things unfolded. I told her that forgiveness will take time, but my priority is Nathan. He's been through enough, and I need to protect his heart. Nathan has been doing better in school and smiles more often now. The other day, he told me, "You're the best dad I could ever have." Hearing that made every sleepless night, every tear, and every moment of doubt worth it. We're rebuilding our lives, and while it's not perfect, it's ours. We survived the storm, and we're stronger for it. No matter what, Nathan will always be my son, and that's all that matters.